Good evening, everybody. Awesome. Connection strong enough down here in the yurt. My name is Samuel. This is Body Made of Stars, and today, Wednesday, October the 6th, is the dark moon in Libra. The dark moon, or new moon as many people call it, happens once a month when the moon's orbit catches up to the sun's and she disappears in the light of the sun for just this one day, only to reemerge, a day or two or three later as this slim crescent on the evening side of things. So this is a really powerful moon. It's a great time to make amends, to do some balancing and restitution work, which is a theme of the early fall altogether. And if you follow these reports, I've been talking about that a lot at the end of Virgo and start of Libra. And it's also just a great time to, clean the decks, set intentions. I got a haircut today, trimmed it all up. We're, even this evening, beautiful partner and I will clean off a surface and reset and create an altar. So there's a lot of ritualized new moon activities that people engage in, and they have for generation after generation, and it looks like that. It looks like burning little slips of paper with your intentions that you are letting go of and what you're ready to dismiss from the last moon cycle, and then also to write your intentions for the new one. So in this air sign, in this very Libran moment where we have the sun, the moon, Mars, which is really conjunct this new moon, and also Mercury retrograding and being caught up to by this triad, we have this opportunity on the new moon to lean into that and to become, put ourselves on the line, put our feeling bodies and our thinking bodies and our physical bodies just in that work. I feel like Libra, it's like the hips of the zodiac, maybe. It's like, you got to go through this canal to get to the other side. And Scorpio, maybe the sex of the zodiac, and so it's like, it can get narrow, it can get tight, but that's the work of justice. It's like you got to squeeze through. People talk about compromise as associated with Libra, and I feel that. I think in a year as polarized as the one we've seen, in really a decade, and we see why, because controversy sells. It's the #1 bestseller forever, and so it pays to have conflict, as we saw with this Facebook whistleblower, and then the reaction to the Facebook whistleblower on Monday. That basically the algorithms, as they model society, society is built on this conflict, and so a Libran principle, which we sometimes call justice, could also be called compromise, because compromise cuts through conflict. We say, what? This could be with your mom, this could be with your partner, this could be with your employer, this could be with your roommate, this could be with someone that if you're listening to what they teach you in school, you're supposed to call a terrorist. It could be with anyone. And you can say, what? I see your perspective. I see that you're not my enemy. We think differently about things. We see things from where we stand. We can't help it. But ultimately, I'm willing to give up some ground and say, here, this is my olive branch. We're in this together, And like the Martian principle that's over there, quote unquote, in its fall in Libra, this is a difficult one for Mars to grok. Mars does not like offering olive branches. He offers swords and missiles and, electrical plugs, and you're either drawing power or giving power. One, power is being exchanged, and the olive branch is more like this relinquishing. That is not the Martian way. And so, this new moon is happening on top of Mars, which is just in the moment where we end a part of the Martian cycle, which is really a 3-year cycle, when Mars has been an evening star for most of the year. and, traveling ahead of the sun. Now the sun is caught up, the moon is caught up, and we're gonna see Mars go into the morning, and disappear for a while, and then emerge, I suppose, next month as a morning star, along with Mercury, who is days away from completing a Mercury cycle, when it goes, as we say, Kazemi. I love that word. Astrology, storytelling, whatever we call it, is full of awesome vocabulary. And Kazemi is one of my favorites. Quincunx, Kazemi, they're all over, inconjunct, there are lots of cool words. Kazemi is when a planet passes behind the sun. Not in front of the sun, like between us, but when it goes behind the sun, the far way. And so that's what's happening when Mercury retrogrades back. So with Mars in there in the fall and being like, oh, we see it. We see people not wanting to cede their ground. We see people being baffled at the concept of compromise, whether that's for or against a stupid vaccine, or whether it's, in these new work situations that are emerging for everyone around the world that are so digital. And I'm sure in people's personal relationships, God only knows, I can speak on it firsthand, and so this was always going to be a tough one, because that Martian principle, a little bit at odds with the Libran principle. And then, in contrast, I would say Mercury retrograde in Libra, this is a fucking saving grace right now. The ability to reconcile, remember, reintegrate, all these actions, these retrograde actions, of going back and saying, you know what, I acted in a way that was not just with this person or towards this issue. Let me remember. Let me go back and humble myself enough to say, hey, I was wrong. I've made mistakes. I make them all the time. So do you. So the Mercury retrograde principle in Libra can be really helpful, and I think a lot of us are kind of feeling like, oh, Mercury retrograde, is this really Mercury retrograde? It feels like I can actually communicate my feelings for the first time all year, and that's part of what's happening here. Is like we're closing out a Mercury cycle, we're headed to Kazemi, which means Mercury will be eventually later this month resplendent as the morning star, where they belong, the Lucifer, son of the morning, and in the process, it's a letting go of a lot of the grudges, a lot of the lies. We've been polarized, we've been hacked. Our mainframe has been hacked, as a culture, as a community, and definitely as individuals, y'all. It's like, you think that just because you don't believe the mainstream sources, you're getting the truth. The alternative sources are also there to agitate you. If, the best way to do it, it's like, learn some Chinese pulse therapy and, the diagnostics. And if you're reading a piece of media and, like, that splenic energy starts pumping, you're probably being lied to or manipulated. The truth is always going to have a few different sides. I used to say the earth is a many-sided jewel, and each one of us is occupying our own flat plane. It's going to look different where I'm standing than it is where you're standing, even if you're only 5 feet away, or even if you're my fucking sister, my blood sister, or even if we've lived in the same building our whole lives in Brooklyn. It's like our perspectives are going to be unique. And, Libra wants to reconcile these various perspectives, that seem to be at odds. And one of the things that we're reconciling is the other cardinal sign, the fourth of 4 cardinal signs, where we've had Pluto in the late degrees retrograde just about all year. It's interesting to note that today is October 6th, 9 months to the day, a full-term pregnancy to the day, from this quote-unquote insurrection on Capitol Hill on January 6th, which incidentally was a day that I had, first gotten into my relationship. So it's always going to be my anniversary. a very happy one for me, and hopefully a happy one for many of us, because we see what a fraud, you know, that whole polarizing game was, on both sides. It's just like the shell game that they play in the Middle East, where it's like the CIA puppets are going up against the Pentagon puppets, are going up against the NYPD and FBI puppets, and it's like, this was a Plutonian occurrence, this January 6th thing, because we're in the Pluto return to the United States. It's going to be direct and exact in the next 2 years, and Pluto in these late degrees of Capricorn is basically like the tower must fall, Pluto, the underworld, Capricorn, the high palace, and it's like, yeah, we've had some dread occurrences in those late degrees of Capricorn over the last 2 years. In fact, I've mentioned this several times, the initiation to the pandemic, this global emergency situation, was the January 12th South Node solar eclipse that happened conjunct Pluto, conjunct Saturn, and conjunct Jupiter. Oh my God, all in Capricorn, January 12th, 2020. At that point in my life, I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of New York. Something is going really sour. The milk's already off, and I don't want to find out, what's going to happen if I try to drink it. So I headed off to Costa Rica, saved my own life, split, the analemma, and I got on the right side of history, thank God, or at least for me. And finally, I will return to New York City at the end of the year, or at the end of this month, for the first time since then. God. Different person for sure. And Body Made of Stars wouldn't have happened if I hadn't made that trip. So thank you, Pluto, for your difficult lessons. And now you've turned direct. And it's like, that was the last retrograde we'll have for Pluto in Capricorn, this 17-year period, before it finally reaches Aquarius in the start of 2024. And that is a true new era. A lot of astrologers are already talking about it. It's like if Saturn and Jupiter have opened the ground, for the Aquarian principle to really become the societal principle. It's like when Pluto arrives, put it in the books. Aquarius will be the guiding principle. It's a sign of the times, as I've been calling it recently. And thank God, this technology, this water that I'm able to pass from my cabin here in Salt Spring and this beautiful yurt in British Columbia to wherever you are on Earth. It's like we're pouring water through these screens, giving ourselves to each other. And that's an Aquarian principle. So, never to discount. We like to talk about squares, we like to talk about oppositions, and also there's an opposition to Chiron that these guys have just passed. The Sun, Moon, and Mars, in Aries, which I wrote about earlier this week. But, we can't discount the trines, man, air to air. We're going from Libra Moon, Libra Sun, Libra Mars, Libra Mercury over to Aquarius Saturn and Aquarius Jupiter. So this work of justice, these two signs have a lot in common. They're the two signs of equity, as opposed to hierarchy. Gemini also kind of shares in that, but Gemini is more sibling, familial, social relations. It's like, the backyard barbecue, it's equity, but then Libra is like the courthouse and the city of equity, and then Aquarius is the society of equity, and belonging and giving people a voice, giving people a role, giving people a platform. And so these principles support each other. So, if you're doing your work in Libra, being just in your relationships, being truthful in your communication, that will also be aiding the bigger project that's happening in Aquarius with Saturn there, doing this deep work, kind of excavating technology, decentralize everything, baby. Saturn in Aquarius, I used to think it was more dread than it was, but really it's decentralize everything. And Jupiter in Aquarius, make it big while we do it, DeFi lending protocols, whatever, liquidity mining, yield farming, and all these terms that meant literally nothing to me when these planets entered Aquarius, which now are like my freaking lifeblood, and we're all going to get rich from if you learn the literacy, and it's worth doing. So that's another thing I'm going to offer, Body Made of Stars, storytelling in crypto, baby, Ye old storytelling and crypto service provider. So contact me if you need to get started on either of those fronts. But this is not at all a promotional thing. I get on these videos twice a month just to chat about what's going on in the sky. So another thing that's important, as I mentioned just briefly, is this opposition to Chiron. So Chiron is a highly elliptically orbited asteroid. And the nearest part of its orbit is actually in Libra. And at that point, it's inside of Saturn. It's closer to the sun than Saturn. And then on its way out to Aries, it goes farther and farther until it's outside of Uranus. So it's like really elliptical. It's not a circular orbit. It's very ovular. And so it's at its the apex of its ellipsis and in Aries, which means it spends about 8 years from 2017 to 2025 in the sign of Aries. And what's happening? Well, our will to be is being restructured. And it's that masculine principle, the fire bearer principle, the fire starter principle, is being exploded. You know, dynamite the old idea of what it is to be a masculine, you know, presence, and restructure it, you know, and rebuild it, like from the crumbled blocks, from the broken down palace. Pluto in Capricorn is helping with that too, for sure. Taking down this idea of empire. And, you know, as it Chiron does this epochal, generational work, you know, that if you're, I love to see it. I love to see my brothers soften and cry in this time. You know, I learned how to cry in 2019. You know, it didn't really hit me until, I've tried for years, you know, but it was just, I got there. I got there at Burning Man 2019, and I just cried a river. And then I was, you know, bawling my eyes out and in my friend's arms, and wafting through the airwaves, I hear the Dinah Washington, where cry me a river, cry me a river, I cried a river over you. And if you've ever been to Burning Man, it's not really a place where you're just like hearing like slow soul music all the time. It's mostly boom, 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 ticka, doom, 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 ticka, doom. And, you know, it was just a very special moment. And ever since then, I've had the access to my tears. So that was my Chiron and Aries moment. Opened my heart, you know, called in this lover I have now, and the life I have, I'm still growing into. And, you know, it's going to come for all of us. And so this time of year, as these major planets are, and these aspects are happening in Libra, you know, we find the balance. The other side of that is like, when we've done our work, can we hold space? You know, and also can we hold space for this vulnerability in the men and in the masculine principle in all of us? You know, it's like we all, young people, we want to charge out into the world and be Aries and be fierce, you know. And this last year and a half, because of the false, or, you know, just whatever, the emergency, extenuated emergency situation, sort of people have had to pull back and rethink what that charge will look like, what it is, you know. And I think ultimately this thing is the conspiracy is divine, you know. It's like we're here to go within. It's like to do the inner alchemy, turn that Martian fire, instead of being out and punching someone at the bar, you know, you like punch down, you know, you break through the boundaries that were limiting you from your own truth. And like all of the art, all of the business, all of the creativity, all of the truth in relationship, all of the music, all of the paintings, all of the brilliant things that are happening in the crypto world. Because one thing worth noting is, if you're not tuned into that, you're not getting the full story of 2021. You know, $2 trillion has appeared in the hands of everyday people, like poof, out of nowhere. $2 trillion, you know. And it's just by learning to work in that world, making friends in that world, The true conspiracies are always conspiracies of friends. It's like, it's all about who you know. The Andreessen Horowitz is not so far away. You know, it's like the biggest venture capitalists in the world, they just want to go hang out with you by the pool, you know, and say, hey, what are you doing? What do you work on? You know, oh, you're an astrologer? Oh, my girlfriend's really into that. Like, you know, it doesn't matter how esoteric, like, you can sideline yourself any way you want, but if you put yourself out there and come as a friend, you know, and also come with that energy of compromise, like what I was saying at the start with the olive branch, you know, doors are going to open that you never thought existed. Where you thought there were walls, there will be doors. And it's a pretty special thing to discover. So, you know, that's my wish for everyone on this new moon. May you find doors where you thought there were walls. And may you come not with a sword, but with an olive branch in your hand. You know, and this also goes for your own past. You know, and that brings me to the last thing I want to mention, which is this Venus and Scorpio, paving the way for this soon-to-be South Node in Scorpio. And, you know, that is about going deep into the sensual, chthonic feeling depths, you know, of your body and of your sex life and of your health, you know, and just to go in there and to penetrate the darkness and to be penetrated by the darkness. I love that meme. Maybe one of the ones that got me into memeing was that, like, I Need Space cartoon where the girl's just like getting reamed by emptiness. You know, so yeah, it's a special one. It definitely is an initiatory time, D. And it also makes this interesting trine to Neptune in the late degrees of Pisces, which is meanwhile sextile to this now direct Pluto in the late degrees of Capricorn. So this like earth and water kite, you know, that is the other side of this airy time where there's Libra and Aquarius and still the Gemini North Node. And so, yeah, feel, you know, don't use your eyes. You can't do it through a screen. Don't even use your mouth. I mean, actually do use your mouth, but not for talking. And feel your way into the truth, you know, and then you can come from that place, express it, you know, make your amends, and, you know, the child inside of you is like right there and can be your best. You can be his best friend, you know, and the elder inside of you is also right there beyond the wall that is actually a door. And you know, that inner wisdom, it's like if you come with the olive branch, it's there for you. Like, yeah. I saw the end of an interesting book on astrology, actually from mostly the Vedic perspective, but a many-sided perspective. You know, about the power and the pratfalls of knowing the future. You know, and we all have that ability. It's not just something that's given to me or to some astrologer. It's like we go into that by getting in touch with our inner elder, and we can do that anytime, you know. So I invite you to do that and build your altars, burn your past, you know, and go into this new moon, this new month, you know, with a conciliatory, loving, forgiving approach to your own past, to others, to this crazy world we live in. And, you know, just remember that you live in a body made of stars. And I love you. Peace.